This is the crumbliest short crust pastry I have ever made. It just melts in your mouth. The leek and bacon filling is also amazing, but this pastry is definitely the winner of this dish. Hi everyone, I'm Aru and let's get straight into it. Let's start by making the short crust pastry. Into a large bowl, add in the flour. Season this with a pinch of salt and then add in some cold cubed butter. Cube up the butter and keep it in the freezer for about 10 minutes or so before adding it into the flour. So that as you're rubbing the flour and the butter together, you get this nice texture which leads you to get that nice crumbly pastry. Use your fingertips and really rub the flour and the butter together until you get a bit of a sandy consistency. Then add in the cold water, the tiniest bit of water at a time, just to bring the dough together. Knead it in, and if it looks like it's still not really coming together, then add in just a little bit more water. The moment you're able to form a ball with the pastry dough, then stop adding water. We want to have lots of pockets of butter rippled throughout the dough at this point. Then tip the dough out onto a flat table and knead it just a little, just so that most of the cold butter breaks down a little and gets distributed throughout the dough. But leave a few pockets of butter be. This helps you get that beautifully crumbly texture once you bake your pastry. Flatten the disc of pastry out a little, wrap it up with some cling film, and then pop it in the freezer for about 20 minutes or the fridge for about 30 to 40 minutes or even up to an hour, just so that the gluten relaxes a little bit and the butter solidifies a little. This is important so that you get a nice texture. Do these little steps and you will end up with the yummiest short crust pastry you have ever tasted. Once your dough has chilled, take it out of the cling film and let it come a little bit up to room temperature, just so that it's pliable enough to roll it out. And then roll it out on a flat surface. Keep turning the dough as you roll it out and keep flouring the table if you feel like the dough is sticking. Roll it out so that it's an inch or so larger than the diameter of the tart dish. Butter your tart dish so that the short crust pastry doesn't stick to the dish, and then pop the pastry into the dish. Push it down so that it fits into the dish nice and snug, and then trim off the edges. Now, short crust pastry is very forgiving. Take some of the extra pastry bits and fill in any gaps or rips in the pastry, especially to get a nice, neat edge. And then chill the pastry again for about 30 minutes, just so that it sets and rests. Take it out of the freezer and then poke a few holes with a fork just to help it bake evenly without any air pockets. Grab a sheet of baking paper that's just a little bit bigger than your tart dish. Crumple it up so that it sits nicely inside the tart, especially around the edges. Weigh it down with either some baking beads or some rice if you don't have any baking beads. And then bake this in a preheated oven for about 20 minutes. Take off the sheet of paper and then bake it again for about 10 minutes, just until you get a little bit of a pale color going. When the pastry is cooked like this, it won't get soggy when you add the filling in. While you're blind baking your pastry, make the filling. Now, this recipe calls for a shit ton of leeks. So trim the root bit and the green bits off. Wash your leeks very, very well to make sure there's no grime between the layers. And then chop it up finely. Chop up some bacon into bite-sized pieces as well. Use streaky bacon for this because the fat that renders down makes for the best oil to fry the leeks in. Pop the chopped bacon into a cold pan and then start heating it. This will render off a lot of the fat. By this time, my pastry was perfectly cooked, so I took it out of the oven and left it out to cool down just a little bit. Now, personally, I like my bacon to be a little less crispy than most people. So once it's cooked to about this level, I'm taking it out of the pan. Add in the tiniest knob of butter into the pan and then add in some finely chopped onion. Stir, season with a pinch of salt, and then cook it for a few minutes just to sweat out the onion and soften it up. And then add in the leeks. Stir well to coat it in all that delicious fat from the bacon. Do not season at this point. Reduce the heat down to a medium-low and let the leeks cook covered for about 10 minutes or so. Stir this occasionally just to make sure that it doesn't burn or stick to the pan. Once the leeks have softened, then season it with a tiny bit of salt, a pinch of nutmeg, and a pinch of pepper. Don't add too much salt because once you add the bacon back in, it might be too salty. Now add the bacon back in, stir well, and then taste and adjust for seasoning. Add in just a couple of tablespoons of flour. Stir this well and cook it for a few minutes just to cook out the rawness of the flour. And then finally add in the milk and stir. This should now be a thick, sticky mixture. Now add in the crème fraiche and stir well to mix everything through. Turn the heat off and let this filling cool down for about 10 minutes or so. Then add in 3 beaten eggs and stir this in immediately. And finally add in half of the grated cheddar. Once everything is mixed through evenly, spoon it into your blind baked pie crust. Spread it out evenly, sprinkle the remaining cheese on top, and then pop this into the oven and bake until it's golden and bubbly. Take it out of the oven and let it cool down for about 20 minutes before slicing into it. And then just enjoy this crazy crumbly tart with a rich, creamy, and absolutely delicious filling. Now you know the drill. Subscribe for more. Bye.